Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name's Al Jeffries. I'm alcoholic. It's nice to be here. I have a tendency to be kind of loud, and I noticed that this is really a good sound system you have. So if it gets loud, let me know to back up a little bit, would you? Being in this particular church, I have to take just a moment of personal time here. I grew up in Westchester. I've lived in Thousand Oaks since 1970. And I grew up in Westchester. My parents moved here in 1948. And I went through elementary, junior high, and high school in Westchester. This particular church that I'm standing in right here, I went to Sunday school in this church, was in a Boy Scout troop in this church. And it's a little bit of deja vu to be standing here, you guys. It's the school across the street. I went to junior high and high school, and that school graduated from high school in Westchester in 1957. So it's a strange feeling to be here and back here tonight. You'll hear speakers come to the podium on a regular basis, and they'll say things like, it's an honor and a privilege to be here tonight and be invited to speak at this meeting. And I concur with that, but I see it as much more than that. I see it also as a responsibility. A responsibility in that Mike was kind enough to ask me to come here and carry the message tonight. And the way the structure of AA meetings are, for the next 40 minutes, I'm it. And I can either destroy your meeting or add to it, you know. And I have a responsibility to not destroy it. I was asked to come here and carry the message. Mike, when he called me, did not say, would you come and share 45 minutes of your opinions at our meeting? That's not what he said. He asked me to come here and carry the message. I look over here, it's step 12. It says, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we're trying to carry this message. This message. You know, what is the message? The message contained in the 12 steps. My experience, strength, and hope, but the message as it pertains to that. You know, carry the message of Alcoholics Anonymous. I noticed a couple of years ago something that's really interesting. You know, that responsibility statement that we've all seen, you know, it hangs in a lot of meeting rooms, and it says, when anyone anywhere reaches out, I want the hand of AA to be there. The hand of AA. You know, what comes out the end of my sleeve is supposed to be the hand of AA. I don't think anybody in here really cares what my opinions are. I don't think anybody came here to hear that. In the 12 and 12, in the 12th step, it says never be discouraged when carrying the AA message. You know, I believe we can't be wrong. I believe that as long as I'm carrying the AA message, I'm doing the right thing in the room of Alcoholics Anonymous. I think it's vital that I do that. You people came here tonight to hear an AA message. I've learned that there's three ways in Alcoholics Anonymous. There's your way, my way and the book's way. And I'm going to try to stick to the book's way tonight. I'm going to make you that promise up front and see if I can't withhold to that as I share up here tonight. I want to talk initially a little bit about chapter 2 in the book of Alcoholics Anonymous. That's the one where it has that shipwreck analogy, where it talks about from steerage to captain's table we're united in a common peril, and it talks about the common peril being alcoholism. As I mentioned a moment ago, what brings everyone into this room tonight, there were no Al-Anon hands tonight, so apparently everyone that came here because of alcoholism, and that's the common denominator. And it's really important to you guys that this guy standing up here tonight be alcoholic. You guys want to know that first. Is the man standing up in front of you tonight an alcoholic? You want to know that. That's the common peril, the thing that brings us together. And you really want to know whether I'm an alcoholic or not. It says in there, right, the common peril is the thing that brings us together. It's the bond, but what holds us together today is the solution. So we come together, and we're bound together by alcoholism, and then we stay together through the solution. But I believe that it's got to be alcoholism first. I look back in my early odyssey through the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, and the people that I identified with were talking about alcoholism. When you talked about terror, bewilderment, frustration, and despair, I understood that. Those things I understood. When people talked about wanting to drink and not wanting to drink in the same micro-millisecond, we understand that. There were times when I knew that I shouldn't be drinking, and I knew I couldn't not be drinking. I knew it all at the same time. Don't drink, do drink. And it was all in that same one thought, and we understand that. In the book it talks about terror, bewilderment, and frustration and despair, and it says there will come a time when he can't imagine life with alcohol or without alcohol. You guys understand what that means. Can't imagine life without alcohol, or without alcohol. We understand that, and when we talk to each other about those things, we understand. We understand. I notice that a lot of times, and people will say, well, I don't want to hear a lot of drunkalogs, or I don't want to hear a lot about drinking, or those long drawn-out drunk stories. And I understand what is being said when someone says that. But I look back again, and had people not shared alcoholism in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, I would have never stayed here. When you talked about principles and steps and program and things, you were talking a foreign language. But if you talked about puking in the shower and stomping the chunks down the drain, I understood. I understand that. And we need to speak to each other in that. I see it kind of, I came into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous and I sat way in the back, and I didn't want to be here. I'm a court card guy, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that. I came with a court card, and I sat in the back on my throne of discontent. And the people that stood up in the front of the rooms and the people that shared in the rooms continued to talk about alcoholism. And it was kind of like they were fishing for me. They would just cast it out there like fly fish, and they'd cast this alcoholism out there, and they'd reel it in. And they'd cast this alcoholism out there, and they'd reel it in. And one day I bet on that. See, one day I bet on that because they shared something that I knew about. I didn't know that I wanted to know about it, but they shared something that I knew about. I've noticed, a minute ago I mentioned those. We've got some folks, and most groups have some old-timer, been around for a long time, and tells those same old drinking stories over and over and over again. And they'll get off on one of those old stories, and we'll be sitting there and our eyes will be rolling back in our heads, and we'll be listening to him. Is he going to tell that story one more time? But what I notice is If there's new people in the room, watch who they gravitate to after the meeting. You know, if you got a new person that's serious about staying here, watch who they're talking to. You know, they aren't talking to the person that was waxing philosophically about recovery. They're talking to the guy over here that was talking about getting drunk. You know, we cast that alcoholism out, and the new man and the new woman will hear it. And it's vital. You know, we can share things with one another that we will catch each other with. You know, I think of some of the things, I can tell you about things that you've heard in meetings, and if you were brand new, that you would know about. Have you ever looked in the eyes of someone you love, a family member, someone that you just terrorized, and you see this disgust and contempt in their eyes, and they're looking at you with fear, and you say to them, "What's the matter with you? Why don't you straighten up? There's nothing wrong. What are you afraid of? What are you acting that way for?" And you blow off their pain, and inside you cry a silent tear. See, we do that to people. We do that to people. And if we talk to each other about those things, we can save lives with one another, because we'll catch an alcoholic with that talk. And we need to do that. We have that responsibility. I believe I have that responsibility up here tonight. Wouldn't it be awful if I was just one real good reader and a quick study, and I could have read this book and stood up here and regurgitated it back to you tonight? Wouldn't you be disappointed? You guys want to know I'm a drunk. You want to know that. So at that point, I'll talk about drinking. As far back as I can remember, didn't fit and didn't belong, wasn't a part of. Now, you've heard that before. But I'm going to tell you about how it relates to me and my alcoholism. I was always on the outside looking in. Never seemed to fit. Everybody out there knew something about life and living that I didn't know. Everybody. And I can remember some of the early experiences of drinking alcohol and how it changed that. And I want to tell you a little bit about that. I can remember some of the first experiences of putting alcohol in me. I can remember putting that amber liquid across my lips, and it would sting and burn on my lips, and it'd be hot on my tongue. It would burn in my mouth. Those fumes would come up and go through my nose, tickle the hairs in my nose. Remember when the fumes would come up like that? It'd be hot in my mouth and my lips would be burning. And I'd swallow it and I could feel it hot going down. And physically, I could feel it go across my chest. I could physically feel alcohol go across my chest. All my life, this guy that didn't fit and didn't belong and didn't have a key and didn't understand, had this tension that lived across my chest, a tightness and a tension that was always uncomfortable, and it all tied into not fitting and not belonging. And I'd pour alcohol in me, and as it went down and passed, this tightness, this physical tightness would loosen. It wasn't as tight anymore. And it would get soft across here. And sometimes I could feel it clear. It would go out my arms, clear into my hands and my fingers. And it would get softer. Physically, it would change me. Just as it went down, amber liquid. But the dramatic change wasn't the physical change. The dramatic change was the psychological change, what it did to my brain. Now remember, I said this is a frightened little guy that didn't fit and didn't belong, didn't understand, didn't know how. I was a Martian on your world. I was brought here from another place. Everybody seemed to have a key to life. Everybody seemed to have a key to life. I can remember this feeling going back to just being a little guy, 7, 8 years old. I could watch other kids on the schoolyard playing childhood games. And they're over there and they know who's up, who's down, who's in, who's out. And I'm standing over by the schoolyard wondering, how do they know how to do that? How do they know that? Frightened, didn't fit, didn't belong, didn't understand. I pour that liquid in me, and it goes down and it does that physical thing, but the part that changed my life, that alcohol would go down and it would hit my stomach, and it would just explode when it hit my stomach, and it would come roaring back up like a ramrod, and it'd come into my brain and it'd go, damn you world, here I am. It would take a frightened little guy that didn't fit, didn't belong, and didn't understand and make him somebody. It would take him a nobody and make him a somebody. It would take a nothing and make him a something. Jackie talked about it tonight, you know. It would bring me from way over there where I didn't fit and didn't belong and bring me right over here into your world and stand me up to home plate. And I was a part of. I was funny. I could tell jokes. I could slap backs. I could shake hands. I was a part of. I stood right in the middle of life. I was somebody. And all I had to do was drink amber liquid to become part of life. I was no longer out there. Life was no longer through foggy glass. It was crystal clear, and I was in it, and I knew how. The clock says it's 8:26 on a Friday night. If alcohol still did what I just described, I wouldn't be standing here talking about not drinking it. You'd have another speaker up here tonight. It would not be me. I'd be drinking alcohol if it still did that, I promise you. I know that. I have alcoholism, and that changed. And it wasn't the problems. I can remember almost immediately beginning to have problems with alcohol when I drank alcohol. I started drinking alcohol when I was about 15 years old. Between the time I was 15 and 21, old enough to drink alcohol, I probably got arrested 10, 12 times for stupid things. Drunk in public, minor possession of alcohol, plain drunk. Used to be, is that park on Manchester where McConnell comes out still there? Used to be a park over there, somewhere around there. When I was 15 years old, I got arrested in that park, drunk in public. I had problems when I drank alcohol. Alcohol created problems in my life when I drank it, and it meant absolutely nothing. It meant absolutely nothing. I see the problems now that I had drinking alcohol as nothing more than the transportation that would periodically bring me to Alcoholics Anonymous. It was like I would come in this big busload of problems. I would have these legal problems and family problems and job problems and health problems and all these kind of problems, and this bus would just get full of this stuff. And I'd come driving up to Alcoholics Anonymous in this bus full of problems. And a few days or a few weeks later, those problems would go away and I'd go away. I would never stay. Problems would only bring me to you. They wouldn't keep me here. When people would say to me, you really ought not to drink the way you drink. You drink too much, you drink too often, you get hostile, you get belligerent, you're a malcontent, your mouth gets dirty. Put your hands on top of the car, put your hands behind your back, we're going to put these handcuffs on you now. People would say things to me like that when I drink alcohol. And I saw it part and parcel of what I had found to live in your world. I had found a way to live in this world. Alcohol gave me a way to live in this world. And those problems were not that important. They just weren't that important. And when people would say things like that to me, I look back on it now, my response to that was to excuse and lie and alibi around all of the problems that they would bring up. And, nowadays when I sit in meetings and I see...
Sorry to interrupt your viewing. Taper Dave here. Just wanted to take a second to ask you to like and subscribe to my channel. Let me know if you like what you're listening. I've got some very good talks here, and this one's a great one. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Tell me what you think.
A new man or a new woman come in and they got a lot of problems, and they're talking about I'm about to lose my job, and my wife can't stand me anymore, and my husband can't stand me anymore, and I just got this drink and driving arrest, and they're sharing all of these things, and then they'll go on to say, but my drinking really isn't that bad, or I can control it. There's that protection there of the drinking. And I look back on it now, and I realize how I was in that regard. And the denial around all of it. When people would confront me with the problems of my drinking, what I heard in my ears was, they'd say, I really can't stand you. I really don't want you to drink. You got a filthy mouth. Why don't you quit drinking so much alcohol? You need to behave better. You know what I heard in my ears? I heard them say to me, I want to take away from you the very thing that you found to live in this world. That's what I heard them saying to me. And I would come immediately out and defend and excuse an alibi, because I was protective of what I had found to live in this world. And as long as I believed that alcohol would allow me to live in this world, I continued to drink alcohol. I continued to drink alcohol. The people in Alcoholics Anonymous, as I shared a moment ago, I came to your rooms on a regular basis not wanting anything that you folks were doing here. But because the people had the grace and the dignity and the respect for where they were to be talking about alcoholism, I found out I was alcoholic in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. The most important thing that I found out that's allowed me to put a brick underneath me and keep me here to build a foundation on is I see a common denominator in most long-term comfortable stickers in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. And most people who come and stay over the long haul will say something similar to this. It quit working. It just didn't do what it used to do. I would set out to have a good time and I would wake up drunk. They talk about alcohol not doing the good things that it did in the beginning. I can remember in the first few years I drank alcohol, I could put a very small amount in me, and I could literally party from 7 o'clock at night to 2 a.m. I mean, it would just light a fire in me, and I would glow and I would be happy, and it would go for hours and hours and hours. And the longer I drank, the more I drank, and the less euphoria I had. The last few years I drank, I had absolutely no feelings of well-being and euphoria, and I kept pouring that booze in me thinking, this time is it. This time it'll be different. The insanity that we talk about in step 2. I thought, this time when I pour this booze in me, I'm going to have a good time. And I believed it, and the insanity that I was stuck in would have killed me if I hadn't kept being brought to you because of the problems I was having. And the brick that you guys drove underneath me was the message that there will come a time when you can't imagine life with alcohol or without alcohol. What does that mean? It means as alcoholic knowing full well alcohol isn't going to do a darn thing, and he drinks it anyway. And that's why we get terror, bewilderment, frustration, and despair. Scared to death. The only thing I knew was being stripped away from me, and it was being taken away. And I was frightened, and I came to the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, and you folks had the respect for where you were to be talking about alcoholism. And when you talked about alcoholism, I identified. And the piece of the puzzle that I needed to know was booze didn't work for me anymore. I needed to know that. Without that piece of information, I would have continued to drink it. Once I had that piece of information, I was willing to do what you people do. See, I would sit in rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous knowing that booze would still work, or believing it insanely that it would still work, and you people would be talking about, well, we have this program here, and we have these steps in this program, and if you begin working this program after a period of time, and in that period of time, you'll have to sit and hurt, probably. Don't we say that to the new people? You may have to sit and hurt for a while. But if you sit long enough and do what we do, then you'll get what we have and you'll be happy again. And I'm sitting back there and I'm thinking, I know where the closest liquor store is. It's 5 minutes away. I can drive down there. I can put booze in me. And in 10 minutes, I don't have to feel the way I feel. Now, why would I want to sit for a long-term solution when I have a very familiar short-term solution that works well? As long as I believed that booze would change the way I felt, I drank alcohol. I did not stop drinking alcohol until the day that I was convinced it wasn't going to change the way I felt. And from that day forward, I was willing to do what you people do. Not a minute before. I got married too young. I married a woman that had a child, and we had another child. So now I'm responsible for 3 other human beings, and I'm having trouble taking care of me. I'm a budding alcoholic, plain and simple. I'm able to, in that period of time, I was able to pull it together and go to work most of the time. And I was able to earn a paycheck most of the time and provide financially for that family. But I was absent. I was absent physically because I would leave and I wouldn't come back when I was supposed to. I would go out on a Friday night and show up Sunday night. Or I would go out on a Tuesday night and show up in time to go to work in the morning. I was absent physically. But more importantly, I was absent emotionally. It's 12 and 12 say of true brotherhood we knew little. I had no sense of how to be a husband and a father. No sense whatsoever. I'm a budding alcoholic, and I have these 3 people that are depending on me to be emotionally stable. Well, I know now that alcoholism, the alcoholism of the type I have, is extremely selfish. I pour booze in me to change the way I feel. I want, I need, I wish, I want. What are the thoughts that are going on in this head when I put booze in me? I don't like the way this is. I want this to be different. I wish things were different. If things were different, I would be okay. If that person were different, I'd be okay. Everything out there comes back to me. I put booze in me because I don't like the way I feel. My take on that today is that's pretty selfish. I put booze in me to change the way I felt. I was a selfish, self-centered person. And this book is pretty clear on that. Selfishness and self-seeking are the root of our problem. It says that. Pouring booze in me on a daily basis was a selfish act. Self-concern. I wanted to change the way I felt. The people I lived with took the brunt of that selfishness. I was a malcontent, I was hostile, I was cold. If I made it to the dinner table with this family, and I reached for the salt, and you were the family member closest to the salt, chances are you flinched when I reached for the salt. That's the sweetheart I brought to you. That's the kind of guy I was. That house was a war zone. People were afraid of me. On November the 1st, 1963, I'm on a construction job down in Santa Monica, doing a ceiling in the main sanctuary of a church. I'm on a scaffold 30 feet in the air, and we're doing this fancy elliptical arch ceiling in this church. There's a loud pop, and that scaffold opens like a trap door, and I'm on my way down. 30 feet. It's like jumping off a 3-story building. We relive things in our minds over and over and over again. I had absolutely no presence of mind. You know, I think back, and, had I tucked, rolled, slid, did something. But I didn't do any of that. It all happened so quickly, and I'm just looking down, and I'm falling. I went straight down. And I hit that concrete 30 feet below flat-footed. Just straight down, flat-footed. Both feet just hit flat-footed. And I'm coming down with so much pressure, my backbone, the spine is just compressed. And the vertebrae right in the middle just blows up, and it drives pieces of bone through the spinal cord, and it partially severed it. And from that day to this day, I've been walking around on these crutches. November the 1st, 1963, 34 years ago. I was just a kid. I was 23 years old, 24? 24 years old. Just a kid. Changed my life. This is Alcoholics Anonymous. That's the end of the medical report. It changed my life. It changed the way I drank. Up until that time, I had to be semi-responsible. I had this family, and I needed to go to work. And I needed to at least provide financially for this family. You take a budding alcoholic, one, disabling injury, all of the self-pity that goes along with it, and then the magic ingredient, money. They started sending me checks. And later on, I got to sue people and get a whole bunch more money. You need to always remember at this point in this share, I spent it all. I'll be going to work on Monday just like most of the rest of you. But it changed my life because, see, I no longer had to go to work. And so this guy that at least was sobering up enough some of the time to go to work didn't have to go to work anymore. I did something that every alcoholic secretly dreams of. Way back in the back of every alcoholic's mind, one of these type of thoughts lives back there. For the next 14 years, I drank. I never went to work again for 14 years. I drank. That's what I did. It was my vocation and my avocation. That's what I did. I drank alcohol for 14 years. This guy that drank to have fun, slap hands and shake backs and have a good time, spent most of that 14 years in a room by himself. I got this house. I'm in this one room, locked in this one room, drinking alcohol, and I got a family functioning out in the rest of the house. And I'm in that room alone. And I stay in there. And I don't take baths, and I don't get haircuts, and I don't shave, and I don't brush my teeth, and I don't make it to the bathroom. And I'm sitting in there all by myself having a good time. Terror, bewilderment, frustration, and despair. Unhappy drinkers who read this page will understand. I was in extremely bad company, you guys. I was in there alone. It'd get real quiet in that house for long periods of time. And I'd think something's different. Because it'd be a day or two and I wouldn't hear a thing. And I'd go out, and out on the kitchen counter, there'd be a note laying on the sink. And it would say something like this: I can't stand living like this. I've taken the children. We've gone to my mother's. And I'd look at that note and I'd say, oh man, I'm screwed up. Really screwed up. And I'd get on the phone, I'd call, I'd say, come back. I'll be a husband and a father, I promise. I'll straighten up and fly right. And if you had to put a lie detector on me when I said that, when I said I will stop drinking, I will be a husband, and I will be a father, if there was a lie detector strapped to me, the needle would not have moved. I meant it to the core of my being. But I had untreated alcoholism. I didn't know how not to drink alcohol. And they'd come back, and in a week, 10 days, I'd be back in that room drinking all by myself again. That note appeared on the kitchen sink 3 times. First 2 times, I did exactly what I told you I did the first time. The third time is the time that's important and the time I want to share with you. Third time, I went out on the kitchen counter, and I picked up that note, and it said, I can't stand living like this any longer. I've taken the children and I've gone to my mother's. The thought that roared through this brain standing in front of you tonight was, good riddance, I'm glad you're gone. Now I can drink the way I want to. I don't have to sneak. I don't have to hide. I don't have to excuse. I don't have to alibi. Drinking had become more important than the people that loved me at one time, more important than the people that I loved at one time. Alcohol's a robber. It steals from me. It takes away my dignity. It takes away my freedom. It takes away my children. It takes away my family. And it will take everything right down to and including my very life. This book says it'll kill me. It says it's a fatal malady. That's what it says. If we don't do the works, we'll drink. And if we drink, we'll die. That's what it says. So I get this bright idea. Now that they're gone, why don't I take this drinking out on the streets and see what the pretty people are doing out there? I'll bet I'm missing a lot out there, and I can probably have a really good time. Well, I took my alcoholism out on the streets, and by this time I'm out in Thousand Oaks. If you were driving around some of the main streets where most of the bars are out in Thousand Oaks in those years, and you saw a guy crawling, and this is not an exaggeration, crawling out of the doors of the bars to his car, pulling himself up in the car and driving away, that was me. My drinking had gotten so bad and I was so unaware of what sort of condition I was in that I literally could not walk out of those bars that I was going into. Needless to say, in rapid succession, I got arrested for drinking and driving 3 times. You know, we hear about these hospital programs, you know, and they talk about this intervention thing that they do. You ever hear that? Intervention? Shoot, I got news for you. Ventura County Sheriff intervened on my drinking a long time ago. So they would put me in jail, then they would put me in a psychiatric lockup, and then they would stand me in front of the judge, and then they would put a court card in my hand and send me to you people. And I'd get the card signed and I'd go away. Or I'd sit in the back and I would listen. The third time they put the court card in my hand, they were not fooling around. They were not fooling around. They put a court card in my hand, and they said, we want you to take this court card to the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous 2 times a week for the next 3 years. And I thought, oh my God, this has to be an arithmetic error. This can't be true. 2 times a week for 3 years. Now, the psychiatric lockup that I go to when I go to jail, the reason they put me in the psychiatric lockup is because I walk on these crutches. You can't take crutches into the main jail because somebody can pick them up and use them as weapons. So I don't go to the main jail. I'm not going to stand up here and complain about that, but I go to the psychiatric lockup, and psychiatric lockup is a cement room with a cot. And there isn't even a toilet or a sink in there. And all there is this peephole in the door, and you got to go over there and knock if you want to go to the bathroom, get a cigarette, get a drink of water. If you want to do anything, you got to, and I didn't like that. That wasn't exactly the greatest place to be, and I thought, well, I don't really want to go back there. So when they put the court card in my hand and told me to go to AA, the depth of my understanding at that time was you guys were an extension of the court system. Because they told me to come to you and get your signature, and I figured you guys are all in cahoots, and so I didn't want to go back to the psychiatric lockup, so I didn't drink when I came to AA meetings. I developed this plan, 2 meetings a week for 3 years. So what I would do is I would go to a meeting on Sunday night and Monday night, and then I would drink for 5 days. And I'd go to a meeting on Sunday night and Monday night and drink for 5 days. Sunday night and Monday night and drink for 5 days. I was so dumb, it never occurred to me to go to 2 meetings in 1 day. Never. All this time I did, it never occurred to me. You know, you hear about keen alcoholic thinking. You only hear that in here. They are not talking about that out there, I promise you. We only hear about keen alcoholic thinking here. So I was going on Sunday night and Monday night and drinking for 5 days, and Sunday night and Monday night and drinking for 5 days, and Sunday night and Monday night and drink for 5 days. 1 week I came on Sunday night and Monday night. I came back on Tuesday night and Wednesday night and Thursday night. That's over 20 years ago, and I haven't had a drink since. Now, why not? Why not? I didn't even want to be here. I'll tell you why. Because the people that were in the rooms that I was going to had the grace and the dignity and the respect for where they were to be talking about alcoholism. When they talked about alcoholism, I identified. I understand alcoholism whether I want to understand or not. I've got alcoholism. And when you talk to me about alcoholism, I understand. Now, this is going to sound outrageous, but I believe this, and I believe it still holds true today. Those people could have killed me. We have that ability. If we're going to sit in these rooms and talk about philosophical mumbo-jumbo, talk about our puppies dying and all that kind of stuff, we can kill an alcoholic that walks in the room. This woman sitting up here and came with me tonight, this dear lady, one of her first odysseys through Alcoholics Anonymous was around the holidays. She's about to die. She goes into a women's meeting and they're talking about Christmas trees. That's fatal. We don't do it. At least we ought not to be doing it. I believe that I have to change when I come to Alcoholics Anonymous. I believe that. You know, I talked to you about how I terrorized that family that I lived with. Tell you a couple of stories about me to bring that point home. When I was laying in that hospital with that disabling injury, I was on this rotisserie type bed, and I had tubes in all different parts of my body. And the guy that I ran with and I drank with walked in the room and he looked at me laying there in that condition on that rotisserie bed with all those tubes in me. You know what he said? This had to happen to anyone. You're the one it should have happened to. That's the guy I brought to you. Told you about that family that left. A couple of weeks after they left, they came back with the trailer and the truck and all of that to pick up their belongings. And as they're getting ready to leave, they're all loaded up and ready to go. And I walked over to the window of the car to that woman that I had been married to. And the only motive I had to going over to that window was to tell her I was sorry. I was content to live my life alone. And as she was starting the car, and I went over to the window of that car, and I reached out to touch her on the shoulder and tell her I was sorry, and she screamed, and she jumped to the other side of the car. That's what I do to people. Now, I can tell you through the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, the spiritual program contained in this book, I don't behave that way anymore. I mentioned this lovely lady that I love and live with here. I can say that I do not behave that way anymore, and she knows me better than any other human being, and her eyes don't roll up in the back of her head. I don't behave that way anymore. I don't do that. I believe that I have the responsibility as a sober member of Alcoholics Anonymous to change through the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. If I come here and I'm a vicious, hateful individual, I got to cut the crap. If you come here a liar and a cheat, you cheat on your mate, you got to quit. You're not a representative of Alcoholics Anonymous, the spiritual program of recovery, if we keep doing that kind of stuff. We got to quit. We have to. I've tried to talk a little bit about responsibility. And I want to, each night when I go to bed and think briefly about the 10th step and review my day, I like to think of something, and I would like to share that with you and suggest it as something that I think that all of us as sober members of Alcoholics Anonymous need to consider, and that is, what sort of a heritage are we passing on to the future generations of AA? Thank you.
I think we got a great talk going on here. Thanks for watching the channel. Taper Dave here. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with. And it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone, through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs. Long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst and one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, oop, out, in, up, down. And then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. I don't know if that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right. But I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.